I've been working also as an HR in LG in the German office. I also had my own startup a few years ago, so I've been in Korea for quite a long time, and I worked with Koreans in different areas. So today I'd like to share some of the insights that I got while working with Korean people, and especially in the area of hiring. We're just gonna look at some of the cases where you can see drastically some examples of especially foreigners communicating with Koreans and some mistakes maybe that they have done, so you can learn more about the corporate culture here, which is quite crucial if you want to get a job or if you want to stay at your current job. So for example, the first example would be called, let's say, a smoking dilemma, right? So there was a girl, it's a real case, she's a graduate of our school and she got a job in a company where she was, she was working well, performing good, and they even gave her like a flexible schedule, which is very rare in Korea. But because she lacked some understanding of the general corporate culture in the country, she was behaving very freely. Like she was a heavy smoker, so she would smoke like 20 times a day, right? So I don't know how many of you worked in a Korean company, but usually if you work for a Korean company, traditional Korean company, it means that you stay in front of the monitor for most all of the time during the day. And if you do not do so, while other of your colleagues do stay, well, that would mean that you have some special treat from like, CEO, right? Or from your team lead. And so the Korean colleagues would probably not be happy with this, that you are having this like special attitude. And because of that, even though she had a great skill and she was performing well, she was fired, right? So this shows how much important it is to understand the environment where you work and how important it is to be aligned with the same, to be in harmony. Also a real case, there was a guy, really smart, like very skilled, great experience. He was working in a Korean company, and basically all the tasks that he was given, he was doing them, let's say it only took him 2-3 hours out of 8 hours a day, right? And he was like, I'm done, there's nothing else I can do, I'm bored, whatever. So other employees, like traditional Korean employees who know how to work, which means do not work so hard, just work slow, perform, but not so intensively. They were not also happy with him being too special, too skilled, too positioning himself as an expert, right? And so this also went against the whole like harmony in the team, and he was also laid off. So another example that it's important to understand who you work with and what is the whole, in Korean we say like 분위기, right? So we had a guy here in Habsida. He was from Russia and he was very reserved. He didn't like to talk much. Well, he still doesn't. So it was quite difficult to get him out and like to be, sociable and like to perform during the job interviews. But he still got a job, and we were very happy for him. But since like one thing we could not think about is that he was very sensitive with the food, right? So he was not very happy with the Korean food in general. And so when it comes to Korean company, as you probably know already, if you don't, then you kind of need to eat together with your colleagues most of the time, right? If you say, I don't want to eat with you guys, well, this would be like a shock, right? They would feel sorry for you if you want to eat alone. So they would probably want you to eat with them, and he didn't want to eat with them in the first place. And then the next problem was that he was not willing to eat any of the Korean food. And he was not religious or anything, he just didn't feel like. And so every time they would go out, they would have to meet his criteria of what to eat. And then finally, after 3 months, they were fed up with this, and they called it a day. So this only shows that I understand that some of you maybe are vegetarians, or maybe have religion or some other reasons that might not be might restrict you from eating Korean food. But it's better to just go with the flow, go and just enjoy some rice and maybe some side dishes, but to spend this time together over lunch, so you stay together, like as a one team. Another thing, so the girl got a job in as a designer in this like fancy company in Gangnam, and after her trial, her team lead, he said, we would like to give you a gift, and the budget, or you can choose any brand, like a luxury brand, we're talking like Louis Vuitton, Chanel, whatever. Go to the department store and choose any sneakers that you want, but like luxury sneakers. And she was in a dilemma because she was like, Jenny, can I really like buy whatever? Because they never mentioned, like a amount. They just said, go and get some luxury brand, whatever. And she was like, does it really mean that I can do that? Or is it like they're like testing me, because if I buy like too expensive, then they would think I'm spending too much. If I do not buy, like, what should I do? Um, what would you do? Would you really buy like the most expensive one? Actually, the answer is that when Koreans offer you like, give you a choice, like you can buy this, they probably mean you can do it. So that's what we told her, and she chose, I think, quite an expensive, like 3 million, one sneakers or something, and she was very happy. Was not, and actually on top of that, they gave her a new iPhone. So this was another bonus. So yeah, when Koreans are giving gifts, um, and if they give you choice, you can just play along. But you have to remember that probably you would have to pay sometime during the week after working hours, official working hours, and stay and be dedicated to the company and all of that. So it's never for free. Okay, same girl. She was, yeah, very active. They promoted her and they made her a manager. And the problem was that she was a manager, but she was like too young. And the people who worked with her, they were older than her. And so this now creates this conflict because we are in Korea, right? Korea has hierarchy. Korea has like age hierarchy. Um, the hierarchy of the university you graduated from. And so she was the youngest, and her staff, they were not really willing to listen to her because they were like, you're younger. So it was really difficult for her to establish, it was like a power game. And initially, it came to the point where she was not performing, her team was not performing because the team members were not willing to do the task they were supposed to do. And she was losing a lot of like authority, and she didn't know how to establish authority because of this like age hierarchy again. And as a foreigner, again, this was another thing, right? Because she was a foreigner. So in this case, you need to play, like, you need to bring the guns, which means like your team lead and the higher management, and to talk this out with them, right? You can't, like, if you feel that you failed in some point to establish your authority, then you need to bring the authority from above. This is the only way you can deal with this, and this is probably the most natural way to solve it within the Korean framework, the Korean dynamics. Okay, well, this is just funny. Uh, yeah, sometimes when you go for a job interview, you can have this misunderstanding because of the Korean language, right? And it happens, like, for example, in this case, they asked, oh, 어떻게 오셨어요? And, like the person thought literally, how did you come? Like, he said by bus or by subway. They didn't mean that, they meant like, why are you here, right? So this would happen all the time, and it even happened with me like millions of times. You need to like also deal with this, and because you're foreigners, they would probably be understanding. Koreans are very understanding in terms of like Korean skill. If you just speak a little bit, they would be happy. If you speak like Korean plus English, it's even better, especially if your Korean is like low, like not very good. So I think my only advice would be for those, especially if you're not fluent in Korean, try to add Korean words here and there, and they would make them feel happy because of that, because you're trying, right? Koreans really appreciate the effort. So even if you don't speak Korean, it's okay. You can just speak in English and then add some Korean words, and that would work. Um, Oh, well, this is kind of a hard story because one of the graduates was hired by a company, but the one of the employees who was already working for the company, he was not happy with that, so he was against um, this guy, yeah, and he basically started to boycott him by not saying hi, which is really like hardcore in Korean culture because they always say hi. And what can you do about it? He quit. After all, he quit because it's not like a working situation. But what can you do about it? You can only do the only thing you can actually do is be friends with the upper management. Okay, I had the same story while I was working for LG. Because I was working abroad. It was a German office, and there were a lot of um, let's say, behind games going on. And the only thing for you, even if you don't have problems with your colleagues, is always better to stay in a good relationship with your upper management. So when you enter the Korean company, always think about, upper management. And the only thing pretty much you need to care about, right? One of our girls, she graduated from designer course, and there was something with the box, like someone, her Teddy, right? So like the person who is one level up, he asked where is the box. She didn't know. She was actually not supposed to know, but he was keep asking her where is the box, where is the box, and like blaming her and being quite aggressive. And the worst thing that happened in this situation is that he was doing it while everyone else was out, right? So no one was witnessing it. And he was quite aggressive to her, to the point where, she started crying, and, there was all this like drama. Finally, they asked, she didn't put the box, so that's why she didn't know. The person who put the box was the 과장님, right? So the upper. And the 대리님, who was under the 과장님, right? He could not ask his boss about the box, even though he knew that the boss put the box, right? Because that's not what you do. You do not ask your boss, like, oh, where is the box? So there's this whole drama again with the hierarchy, right? And you need to understand that there's a hierarchy, that even though that's like more logical, right? To just go and say, hey boss, I'm sorry, but we don't know where the box is. Maybe you know, right? It would just be very easy. They can't do it because, again, the hierarchy. You can't bother the person, from the upper management, basically. And so you go bother other people, even though these people do not know, but you still bother them. Yeah, anyway, they solved it. They're working fine together, but yeah, there was a conflict. Okay, this is just some of the examples, real examples that our students had. And now let's talk a little bit about myths about hiring foreigners in Korea. So there's the first myth that Korean companies are not willing to hire foreigners, right? And this is totally a myth. I don't know if you guys saw there's like a sub page for Saramin right now that is for only for foreigners, right? So there are companies who are willingly hiring only foreigners, and they're providing visas, which is great. I think it's a great opportunity, and it shows a lot of change on the market. Because actually it's quite hard for them to find a developer, and they always, most of the time, they do not only want a developer, they want a developer plus something. And so also Korean people, they're not willing to work for any company, right? So most of the Korean people, they want to work for like good established companies, right? And because of that, they're not willing to go and work for some like no-name companies, let's say. And that's when we come and we say, hey, we are fine, we want to work with you. So they are very open, and so this is a total myth. Most of the people that we are already like who got a job, who were our graduates, when they came, the companies were very welcoming. They were, educating them, and they were providing the same rights. So there was no discrimination, to be honest. So even I would say on the contrary, they would get like a more special treatment. So yes. Second myth, you must have a topic. So you probably know the topic is a language, whatever, certificate of your knowledge for Korean. But this probably more used for the academia, right? If you want to study in university, or like master degree or PhD degree, whatever. For applying for jobs, no, they don't even know what is topic. Some of them. Well, some of them know, but most of them, if you tell them I have topic, they'll be like, okay, fine. The only thing they really want is for you to be able to communicate with them, right? So even if you don't have, and you never passed any exam, it's not a problem, as long as you can just talk to them and communicate, even if it's just English and some Korean, fine. They are very fine with that. Also, I'm not a computer science graduate, right? I graduated in arts. This is the best thing I like about Korean companies and Koreans in general. They hire and they give you such credit before you even start working. Basically saying, okay, we like you, let's try and let's work together. Even if your resume is not perfect and your skills are not perfectly matching, and maybe you just graduated from arts or piano. When I worked for LG, we had this person, she was in logistics department and she had master degree in like violin or something, you know. So this just shows that most of the time they just look at you as a person, right? Of course your background is, you know, it matters, right? And you need to show some of the experience in the field, even if it's, you know, even if it's not much. But in general, if they feel that there is a chemistry, that they like you, that you might be a good fit for a company, maybe you have some other advantages like languages or whatever, they will just hire you and say like, okay, let's try, let's see what we can do together. And this is great. This is really good. Because, you know, from my experience in Europe, let's say, or in the US, you really need to match the bullet points. And if you do not, then, you know, never. Next one. Yeah, you'll never program, but you know that's again that's similar with the previous one. You will do it while you're working in a Korean company. You know, some of our students when they got the job, they started their work with learning another language. So they would just like 3 months, they would just go work, get the salary, and work and like learn another language. And then only then they would like start working with the projects. So that again shows that Koreans are very open about, you know, in general hiring people who are not a perfect fit. We actually, I placed personally like very young, like 20s, early 20s, and let's say 40 years old people, you know? Yeah, either like both groups, they got a job finally. The resume was different, of course, and like we had different approach to placing these people into Korean companies, but overall, it doesn't really matter. Of course, as a junior level, the younger the better. If you are older, then you probably need to like sell yourself more like you know, middle level plus management, right? Because at this point they would probably look for someone who would be a team lead. um this is also not a problem, to be honest. These days a lot of companies, they already know about how to get the visa, like they know about the process of getting visas, so this is really not a problem. If they are interested to hire you, they will provide visas, they will prepare all the documents